So, good to see everyone. 大家好，好久不见了。我觉得好久不见了。也许你们来过。I'm going to say a few things in Chinese. Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah. 也许大家可能听了我们最近的一些英文的讲座，但是都没有时间跟各位聊天儿。这个学员群比较的小一些，比较的亲密一些，所以呢，可以跟大家随便说几句话，稍微随意一些。那今天请的这位呢，叫 Mario Hardy， 大家已经看到了他的中文的那个非常简单的简介。那么我跟大家说一下，他呢是 PATA， 叫 Pacific Asia Tourism Travel Association, right? Tourism or travel? Travel Association, yeah. 就是亚太 PATA 是在行业里头蛮有名的。其实大家如果是在旅游行业的话都知道，他这个亚太旅游协会的 CEO， 他是首席执行官，所以他在这个职位上还是做了蛮多的，大概是好像是6年还是8年。How many years have you been CEO? I don't want to get it wrong.
Almost 7.
Almost 7, yeah. So I said between 6 and 8. 那已经做了7年。那在这之前呢，他做过各种各样的企业的高管，然后他自己到现在也做一个投资基金，叫做 MAP2 Ventures 的董事长。他们也做一些科技方面的投资，主要是投一些比如说金融技术呀、人工智能呀、绿色项目呀。大家可以问他，就为什么在这个旅游和投资之间两方面他都参与哈。那在旅游行业里头呢，他是比较主张这个可持续旅行的。在可持续旅行这个行业这个圈里头，他很有名因为他在亚太地区做了不少的工作其中比较有名的一个是在越南，他做了一个社区旅游项目的开发，我们可以仔细听他讲一讲。在柬埔寨呢，他也为一些困难儿童建了一所学校。就因为这个，他在柬埔寨建的学校呢，2016年的时候，温哥华的一所大学叫卡佩拉诺给他授了一个荣誉博士学位。之前当然他是加拿大魁北克的人，所以他讲法语。刚才跟我讲法语来着，我要跟他试一下的话，我讲不通。现在被这个旅游和平国际研究院任命为这个旅游和平大使，所以在国际旅游行业里头是蛮有名的。可能国内的大家同学不知道，听说过没听说过哈 ？OK， 所以今天的那个会谈呢，更多的是我问他一些问题。如果朋友们对这个行业的发展趋势有一些什么问题的话呢，欢迎各位直接提问题。So Mario。Thank you. Now I'll switch to you. I just briefly introduced your background to everybody and your
I know
resume.
you've done your research well because you've shared some things I didn't share with you. So
Which ones you didn't share with? No, I even heard your speeches on YouTube.
That's why.
And I am actually going to go there as well. Since most of the people who are in this room are industry practitioners, they're very probably private business owners, not necessarily government owners. So a lot of it will be gearing towards your thoughts on how the industry, how each business can do better post-pandemic. Now, I'm going to actually start with a very simple question, which you are very familiar. Tell us a little bit about PATA. PATA's, I know I read the mission is to promote integration of regional resources in Pacific Asia area. But in today's world, the whole world is so integrated. How do you interpret this mission today in today's context? Yeah, start there.
Yeah, PATA is a little bit unique. We're both a public and private nonprofit organization. So we have 99 or 98, I believe, destinations or governments who are members of PATA around the world. But we also have now about 650 corporations, businesses, as well as universities and thousands of students. But we cover every aspect of travel and tourism. So from the smallest tour operators, SMEs, all the way to the largest corporations, the TripAdvisors, the Expedias, the C-Trip, and etc., to the airlines, the airports, the cruise lines, car rental companies, insurance banks, anyone who actually touches the travel and tourism industry. is actually a member of PATA. So this is actually what makes us really unique, because we touches everyone within the sector. And even though the name of the organization is Pacific Asia, our membership is global. We have members in Africa, in South America, and across the planet. And so our mission is really to help to develop tourism in a more sustainable and responsible manner moving forward, by bringing together all the parties in the same table, as I mentioned before, the public and the private, so that we can have more partnership, more collaborations in ensuring that we develop tourism more sustainably moving forward. So as you said, things have changed very much in the last 15 months. The future of the travel industry or tourism industry is likely to be very different moving forward. And I was commenting to someone yesterday or just 2 days ago about the fact that, when we looked at the tourism destinations around the world, there are some destinations obviously who were very popular with certain source market. For example, Thailand was very popular with the Chinese market and others. But the question mark that we all have at the moment is the world order in terms of tourism arrivals about to change post-COVID-19? Because the question is not only about the health and safety, but it's also, or the perceived health and safety, I should say, but also about air access. Air accessibility is extremely restrained at the moment. It's really challenging to travel to some places around the world. So the big question will be post-COVID-19, if there is a post-COVID-19, it could be a very long time, how will we access certain markets? Like you've got beautiful pictures of Palau on the background here. Access to Palau at the moment is a little bit restricted. If you think of the islands of Yap in Micronesia, who only had one flight a week before COVID-19, they don't even have any flights at all now. It's going back to centuries of people navigating by ship. And it's a really strange world that we are in at the moment.
Indeed, yeah. The picture is really beautiful, but I think I want the 讲堂助理 to tweak the display a little bit so that I can see you in a bigger picture. You're in a very small square right now. 那个是可以这样调一下，对，就好一些，对吧？哎，对，这样子我可以看的要稍微容易一点，谢谢。So what does PATA actually do for all the members?
So we have a lot of activities that we've been organizing over the last few years. Yes, we've been doing a lot of webinars, of course, and online conferences, and a lot of online activities. Essentially, through let me go back a little bit to 15 months ago. And when this whole crisis started, and initially people came to PATA and said, we're looking for information. We want to make sure that the information we get is not fake news. It's actually really real. How do we get it? Where do we go to actually find this information? And then we've created a portal called the Crisis Resource Center, crc.pata.org. That resource center is available to any of you. You don't have to be a PATA member. Of course, we'd like to have you as a member, but if you're not, you can still use the platform. It provides toolkits for you to promote your services in a safe manner, to look at the health and safety protocols, to look at different policies between governments and etc., to look at best practices moving forward. So that's one thing we've done at the early stage. Now, what is unique about this crisis, it changes every day. Things are shifting, either get worse or get better on a daily basis. Some countries are better, some are less. And it keeps shifting. So keeping track of all of this information has become really challenging for everyone. And then the next thing we started to hear from our members said, well, we miss seeing people. We miss meeting people face to face. We used to go to trade shows, to conferences, gathering information, meeting people, socializing with the other businesses. We really missed this. And then we created activities, online activities, not too dissimilar to what you're doing today, but at a much greater scale, where people can network, essentially just meet together, enjoy, have fun, even though it's virtual. So we organize some funny things like a happy hour. People bring their drink and we all meet up on screen and we share ideas about what's happening. Exactly. You got your coffee. I've got my glass of water. It's too early for wine for me.
Water.
But and then we organized a festival, Dream to Travel Festival, where we invited destinations to showcase what they have to offer, but not as a recording, as a live session. And the fact that maybe the camera was shaking and the internet wasn't particularly good in some cases, it didn't matter. People just wanted to feel the real connection to the community, not seeing a video, because I could watch TV all day and it will do the same thing. And in addition to that, on the background, we've also done a lot of research. Those are mostly used by academics as well as the government institutions, and looking at different policies by the various governments within the region here in Asia, for example, or looking at the various protocols being implemented by various organizations. So we run a lot of different activities, as I mentioned. Of course, sadly, at the moment, they're all online. We do hope that we can get back together in face-to-face meeting. We had a few hybrid events with people face-to-face as well as connected online. And we plan to have more of those later in the year. We also do training, and at the moment, mostly online, but before that, it was face-to-face training. So various activities that we provide to enable people to learn, to trade and do business, as well as networking.
所以刚才大家听到了他讲的，他们做的这些事情，其实跟我们讲堂做的有些相似处，但只不过它的规模很大了。它一个是它 CRC Crisis Resource Center .pala.org 如果有哪位同学需要这个 crisis， 就是关于 COVID， 关于这个新冠疫情，各国的政策呀那些东西资料需要的话，它那里是应该是比较全的，不一定要成为它的会员都可以看得到。所以可以用这个资源，然后呢，另外他也做一些什么 virtual conference， 就跟我们这种差不多，用 Zoom 的方式，有一些混合的，然后还有在后面他们背景里头呢，也在做一些研究啊、培训啊。不过这些现在都是线上的。他 PATA 在亚洲呢，组织这些行业还是组织的蛮多的。Okay, since you see almost everybody in the travel industry, here's what I'm going to ask. For COVID impact in China has been very strange. It is very different from the rest of the world, right? One of the main problems is now China domestically travel is completely open and completely vibrant, right? We just had this May Day holiday. You know,
56 million trips, no?
Possibly. I know it's 230 million people.
Yes, yeah.
230 million people travel domestically alone. And so for small businesses who are serving domestic market, it's actually not great at all because you are fighting for resources. The hotel rooms, the hoteliers may have said, yes, you have a booking. When your guests show up, someone else's guest has already showed up paying full fees. And so they bump your guests. So it's terrible for small businesses running domestic business. And for people like us, like Wild China, we are counting on inbound business into China. Nada. The door is closed. So what do we do? Any advice in this situation? Should everybody switch to inbound business, domestic business, or should we hold out for cross-border business? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a question I've been asked quite often over the last year.
Really?
More so probably last year, because sadly most and you're fortunate, you're still in business. Most of the people who ask me that question are no longer in business. They're gone. Their business have closed. So
大家听到他刚才讲的，我问这个问题，我说是要集中做国内市场，还是在坚持等着入境市场？他说去年1年很多人问这问题的人大多数都死了。 I hope I don't fall into that category. Okay, I'm asking this question on behalf of all our members.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. So just to give you in perspective, no, a year ago, in April last year, we conducted a survey amongst 500 small businesses, SMEs, across the Asia Pacific region, majority of them being tour operators. Already in April last year, 15% of those responded had said they're closed their business. 42% of those responded had said they only had money to run their business for 2 to 3 months, which means by now they're all closed. So multiply this now to a year later, that number is in hundreds of thousands of businesses that are actually permanently closed for a few reasons. One, for like the vast majority of these businesses, they didn't have any reserve. They didn't have enough cash to go through an event that would last so long. Most businesses were operating on cash reserve on a 3 to 6 month. Few of them maybe had enough cash reserve for a year. So now they're actually all gone by now. Others who were maybe had a better cash reserve, I started to actually, I'm getting to your answer to your question, started to pivot to go into different activities. So for example, there's a tour operator here in Bangkok, which you probably know, local alike. Nice, two young individuals started this business. Quite a fascinating story. Samsak, who's the founder, work in a rice field with his family, earn $1 a day. Very poor family, working in a community. And he wanted to help his community, and an idea of starting a tour business to bring tourists into the various communities to help them to earn more income. And they started several years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I think. Have been very successful until pre-COVID-19. Their business was growing rapidly, and small tours, small activities. My wife and I went on it the first week we arrived in Thailand, and we truly enjoyed it. We did a 9-hour walking tour in Bangkok. I did actually suggest to him, I said, to shorten it next time, because 9 hours under the sun was really cooking. But it was a fantastic experience. And of course, COVID hit, and their tour guides and the communities were also severely affected. And then, but he was still committed to ensure that this community survived. And he started to do some online activities. So their guides were wearing cameras on their head, and they were touring some of the village and going to meet with the villagers, having discussions with them, streaming them online, a little bit like Netflix. And people paid a small amount of money, not a huge amount of money, but maybe $20 to have this virtual experience. In addition to this, many of these communities also have restaurants. I mean, local families cook local meals, and they started to put on their platform the ability to sell their food produced by the local community and have it delivered to the people living in the city in Bangkok. Most people don't know, but in the city of Bangkok itself, there are actually still 5 local communities. People who still dress in their traditional dress and live in their traditional life inside the city of Bangkok. Most people who live in Bangkok, even the Thai, don't even know about it. And that's why they started to do these different activities over a period of time. So, of course, that does not generate a massive amount of income from them, but enough to keep their business open and to keep a few of their tour guides with enough to provide to their families during that time of crisis. So that's an example of how one business, for example, pivoted into different activities.
Yeah, but the situation in China is particularly challenging in the sense that because of the extraordinary amount of people that are traveling right now, it's almost impossible for small tour businesses to make money serving domestic market, just because you cannot compete for resource. The guides have gone on to live streaming, selling cosmetics, whatever, right? They have to make their living as well. But I don't know how's everybody doing. In fact, I haven't asked this question, our members. they joined me in these chats a year ago, and it's tough. If anyone wants to share in this group, anyone's facing such difficulties, raise your hand. I'd love to bring you into the conversation with Mario. Yeah, but go ahead. You were going to say something, Mario.
No, I agree with you. In China, I think things are very different, and we see it from a distance, or we read about it in terms of what's happening in the ground in China with domestic travel. Is the numbers are amazing. They're crazy. They're just like most other countries would dream of having numbers like this, of having hotels overbooked and refusing people at the door because they are overbooked. That's just a dream for most people, most businesses outside of China. You're in the country is in a very unique situation, in the complete opposite of the rest of the world. In terms of travel. But for businesses like yours and others who have entirely focused their business on bringing people to China, it's a real issue. At the moment, as far as I know, and you and maybe your colleagues on this call might know better the answer to this, but from what I read, my understanding is that China will not open to international visitors in 2021. It may only be in 2022 with certain restrictions. So you're looking again at a very long period ahead of you of having the same situation. So I think the alternative is, I can see only two alternatives, and maybe the rest of your group have other ideas. One is probably not ideal because of the problem you just mentioned, is obviously shift and focus to the domestic market. But as you said, it's highly competitive and resources are not available. The alternative is to look at other markets outside of China, but kind of defeat a little bit of the purpose, since your brand name is Wild China. So you maybe you need to create a new wild something else.
Wild Asia.
Yes.
Right. Let me share this your point of view here. 因为刚才我问他的这个问题，我觉得是至少我们公司是面临的非常非常实际的一个问题，就是现在国内的业务其实已经非常繁忙了，但是国内业务呢就面临着非常激烈的竞争，订房订不到，酒店订不到，什么导游也去改行了什么的，但是入境这边呢进不来。他刚才说在行业里头大家普遍的意思是，中国2021年就今年1年是不大开放的，可能是不大的。就是那咱们以这个入境为主业的这些旅游公司来讲，就要做好继续今年1年怎么样坚持下去。那他刚才举的那个例子就在曼谷的一个小伙子，他们做的那个行业叫做local alike， 那么一个就是当地城里头像当地人那样子去走，通过走路去认识他们的社区那样子的一个 business， 也是 COVID 新冠来了以后呢就全部关门了，但是小伙子还比较有创意。那现在就是2个生意，一个是在网上让他的导游去做直播，也是看这些体验。再一个呢，他们组织当地的这些社区的人给他们做饭送到别人家里头去，就是这个英文里头最重要的一个词儿。今年我听的最多的一个英文词儿叫 pivot， 就是这么着有个轴心，但是呢你改方向 pivot， 这是他刚才讲的最重要的一个理念。就是所以现在他看我们可能也就只有这么2条路，看怎么样坚持下去。大家就这个问题有问题吗？有问题我就带你进来，没有问题我们就继续往前走。I said this one word that you just used is the one word that I've used most in this last year. We've been very lucky, actually. One of our team leaders, Aki, is in the room. We have corporate event and education business completely pivoted to serving domestic market. Completely, and they helped big time to slow the cash drain. Otherwise, the runway. 他说，大多数的旅游行业这些小企业的现金就能支持3到5个月。你想，现在都进入第2年了，咱们还在这里坚持着的，加油，加油就是胜利。Okay, now switching it to a more positive side.
Let's try.
Oh, I'm sure you're seeing more than we do. So any crisis, you know, the word crisis in Chinese means both
Yes.
danger and opportunity, right? So what are the opportunities you're seeing, particularly when you invest in technology and all those other areas?
Yeah, I see great opportunities to use. I mean, as I said to most businesses, especially for hospitality and hotel owners, for example, to use this crisis to do the things that you wish you could have done but never had the time to do before. So if you're owning an hotel, for example, any renovations or upgrades that you want to do, now's the perfect time to do it, for example, if you have the cash, of course. But the good news for hotel owners, certainly for in Asia or Southeast Asia, the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank have actually provided or able to provide loans at a very attractive rates for hospitality or business owners, hotel owners, to revamp their property at the moment, especially specifically if they commit to actually spend that money on more sustainable products. So putting renewable energy, water filtration systems, or anything relating to infrastructure that will make your property more greener and more friendly towards the environment, for example. So that's one aspect. The other is on technology. And again, for those who do have cash to be able to do this, I mean, some of it actually doesn't really cost that much money, but enabling for mobile payment, something that everyone in China is now using almost exclusively, QR codes for payment. The rest of Asia, some countries are already implemented QR payments quite well. Thailand is doing it pretty well with both Line and WePay. But others are still behind, for example. There's other type of technologies also that I think are moving forward. My other hat outside of PATA
Yes.
is quite excited about this current situation because I see tons of opportunities in technology, and that's what we invest in. So for us, it's been doing really well on e-commerce and logistics and other areas.
刚才大家知道他说的那个叫做亚洲开发银行，他们现在如果是你有酒店的话，可以，他们有一些装修的贷款，但是呢，只要你做的项目是跟环保有关的，比如说你把房顶全部改成太阳能的，或者是增加废水处理啊，像大理的那些海边被拆了的那些酒店。但是亚洲开发银行你们可以看一下，我觉得可能金额会比较高，100-200万以上的那种，你可能才会考虑。这是机会之一，就是用这个机会来做点别的事情。还有呢，他说在技术方面做一些投资，我可以给大家分享一下。这个是 I'm gonna just share a little bit about what we are doing, taking advantage of this time. As we are actually pouring more staff, manpower, and investment into marketing. I hope I'm not betting the wrong thing, but we've done a lot of Zoom events like this one with our guides visiting Beijing and remote locations, because now the captive audience, the audience is actually ready to sit through a session and look at Beijing on the screen. That's different from a YouTube, just because they can ask questions. And one of our most popular session was this guide showing guests using a cell phone on his commute, buying breakfast, taking subway, and scanning a bike to get to office, and he has to scan his face to get into the office building. People were fascinated to see how Chinese live. We did not charge a fee for that sort of thing.
Yeah, we did something similar last year during the Dream to Travel Festival at PATA during the month of July last year, where we invited a Thai celebrity to do a live streaming tour of the city with the protocols in place of the QR code scanning and the sanitizations and etc. Just to tell people, to show people the experience of having to travel to the city and still being able to enjoy it, to go to the Grand Palace and go to the shopping malls or the restaurants. Although you had the protocols around it, you could actually still enjoy it at that time. So
we also launched a podcast. It's called the China Travel Podcast.
Good.
which is a weekly thing. And every week, Wednesday afternoon, 6 p.m., we meet in Clubhouse. I don't know if you heard of that social media. Yeah, so we are in Clubhouse.
I'm on Clubhouse and I see you popping up on my screen from time to time. I'm still trying to figure out how it works. So.
Come join us. We've made it a regular, but we use that time to talk about a specific region of China, and we record that into a podcast, which is a good use of the time.
Yeah, I think it's good because most people at the moment, certainly from many surveys conducted by TripAdvisor and other businesses too, is that people are looking for inspiration. They know they may not be able to travel yet, but they're still looking for inspiration of making their short list of places they want to go when things actually reopened.
Yes. 所以我给他分享的那个，大家也有机会的话，也可以在你的那个苹果上头 podcast 可以听我们的 The China Travel Podcast， 是我和另外一个同事，我们每周三加州时间下午6点。在 Clubhouse 里面，我们就谈中国的一个目的地，去这个地方到底为什么要去这个地方？你看什么呀？见谁呀？吃什么呀？一些反正很实用的一些。然后因为在 Clubhouse 里头聊，录下来做 podcast， 我觉得是比较好的一种时间投资。所以呢，这个时候就只能是谢谢。我们下一期马上就出来了，下一期是聊上海的，谢谢 Marina。Marina listened to our podcast and she's already into our episode 3. It's weekly, so we're going to run out of episodes very fast.
Good.
It's interesting. I'll send a link to you.
Yeah, I did one series on Spotify and Apple. It's actually on all Google, Apple, and Spotify. It was called Travel to Tomorrow, and last year. And I started another one a few months ago called Beyond Zeros and Ones, which is specifically on technology.
Fantastic. Yeah. You should share a link with me. I would love to share it with our members.
Sure. I'll send it over.
Okay, I have 2 more questions on travel, and then I want to switch to talk about you.
Sure.
I heard in one of your YouTube interviews, you mentioned the tourism industry has been so wrong in its measurement of its success, right? Because we're measuring 2 things, number of travelers and the tourism dollar. Yeah, mullahs. Those are the 2 things people measure. For everyone in business, unfortunately, we have to measure in that way as well. I mean, all the others, I think of Wild China, I like to measure Wild China in its impact on certain community, but a lot of other things are very intangible. It's very hard to measure. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, yeah, we've just completed a piece of research with for the Asian Development Bank on what we call big data in tourism. Looking at the current measurements that are actually being used by various destinations or governments around the world, and the data that also that is we believe is needed that is not currently available. So some destinations around the world measure everything. For example, Macau has excessive amount of measurements that they use to track essentially every single visitors throughout their entire journey. They know absolutely everything about what you do. Not you as an individual, as an aggregate, obviously, but still they know quite a lot. Other destinations are not that sophisticated yet. So there's a huge gap. So yes, the number of visitors and spending is critical. It's still important. I'm not saying it's not. It is important. It will continue to be important. But my argument is that it should not be the only measurement. What we should be measuring from the government point of view is also looking at the job creations and they're actually being done through tourism, for example, to look also at the environmental impact of the visitors coming to a destinations as well. And these additional measurements, we're not suggesting we should measure them because we want to prove that tourism is bad. We want to use them so that we can understand what are the requirements for infrastructure, for future infrastructure development for a destination, for example, or to understand if there's maybe too many tourists at certain times at certain places. And can we help by understanding how many there are, if there's a need to disperse them into other areas by creating new destinations or new products or new services, so that we can actually send people to other places within a state, a province, or even within a city or a country itself, for example. So in our opinion, I think that the other measurements are also critically important. As I mentioned, jobs, environmental impact, water consumptions, and etc. All of this is as well critical, and also the impact on the communities, on the people working in the sector. Because one of the things you might have heard in one of those YouTube that I did before is also the fact that we quite often at PATA, we don't really talk about tourism. We talk about the complete visitor economy. And the reason for this is the people who work on the farms, they are part of the tourism industry. The people who drive the Ubers and the Grab taxis and etc., they're part of the tourism industry too. So if you look at the total, and there is no better way to look at the impact than actually now, because it's not only the direct tourism sector which is impacted, the farmers have been impacted as much because they're producing food consumed by the tourists. There's no tourist, so there's less food to be produced, less food to be sold to the hotels and the restaurants and etc.
Very interesting. Yeah, those are actually great numbers to look at. Jobs created. I think that's what Chinese government is measuring that very closely. Environmental impact or water consumption, those are harder to have a standardized measurement. But in general, I think PATA is looking at more macro level of working with policy decision makers. From a private business perspective, do you have any suggestions? Well, I will give you two examples of what Wild China measures. We actually measure, one is the satisfaction rate. We often, on the survey, we all ask them a couple of about 10 questions. It's a scoring system. If they have more, they can tell us. And we always look at the extreme 5 and extreme 1. I ignore everything else in the middle. Because for me, the 5s will create word of mouth. They will go tell others. The 1 also create negative word of mouth, and it amplifies 10 times more. So customer satisfaction rate. And we look at customer repeat rate. Each customer, how many times they repeat with us. That's a measurement of the quality of the experience of the guest. And the third thing I look at is the villages that we work with closely. Let's say our students go there to work with the farmers, do spring planting. I want to track the village and see if the village turns into one of those tourist sites where villagers will come and say, I'll pay you, you pay me $1 and take my photograph, that sort of thing. To me, that's a wrong direction to go. But instead, if your students continue to show up, there is a very warm hospitality and reception that is real. I view that as a success.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, as a tour operator, you want to obviously measure satisfactions of of the people who actually use your services. That's critically important. But I also think that you can go beyond by also measuring job creations. So, for example, I'm sure you're familiar with Planetera. I guess they may be somehow a competitor to you in some cases, but they have some really good measurements of job creations, not only on the people they employ themselves, but also the suppliers they work with, for example, the communities that they go and visit, where there's contributions being made. They account for those also to look at how many jobs has your Wild China has created or supported, I would say, rather than created, over a 1 year period, over the entire existence of the organization, for example. How many families have you helped to feed in the various communities? How much potential revenue has been created in these remote communities that weren't necessarily visited before? And I think there is a story behind this that actually helps when people come and visit you and maybe look at your website or look at working with you to see that actually you're a good business. You're a good business only because you offer good services, but you're good also with the communities that you actually work with. And I think that's another measurement I think can be also equally important for tour operators.
Yes, we do look at, how many more local hosts we're signing up into our system, how many more experts we're signing into our system. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. This question on tourism related is going to be a little sensitive on China's national branding. Because I'm in the States, sometimes I feel China's brand image in the past was always this cuddly panda, warm, hospitable country. And now I attended one or two of these trade conferences, and I'm experiencing a little bit cold shouldering. And that was a shock to me. This is something very new since COVID began, I would say, since COVID began. What are your thoughts on that? Is what I'm experiencing a general trend you're seeing?
I think it's a general trend, or certainly from what I hear and comments I hear from people like yourself who live in North America. I think it's more of an issue with the West than it is actually for people living in the East like me in Thailand. For the rest of Asia, I don't think the sentiment is actually shared. On the contrary, certainly at the early stage of the crisis, when a certain gentleman with who has an orange color skin, who was living in a big white house, was making comments about, this is the China disease and etc. and all the silly things he was saying last year. Asia actually took a different perspective, maybe to defy him a little bit, because here in Thailand, for example, we were seeing big shopping malls who were receiving a lot of Chinese guests at that time, plastering on the sidewalks, big signs saying, we love you, China, we're in support of you, and etc. and supporting China because they were the first one impacted by COVID-19. No one really believed at that time they would actually, get to the scale it is and go on a global basis. It was primarily China. So people wanted to support them, knowing that, China has supported our economies in Asia for a number of years, 120, 140 million visitors a year. 27% of those came to Thailand, for example. The Chinese government and the Chinese businesses wanted to show support and compassion towards China. And I believe for the rest of Asia, that sentiment is still here. But certainly from what we read in the press, for the sentiment is very different in North America.
Okay. Would it make sense to pivot and build inbound business throughout Southeast Asia?
I think it would. I think it would certainly a natural extension of your business. And I think the importance of diversifying your portfolio to be more resilient in the long term, mainly because also, as I mentioned before, where people will travel moving forward is really difficult to say at the moment. But we do know that people will pay more attention to, as I said, health and safety, the ease of access to the country. So in terms of the health protocols, do you need to be vaccinated? Do you need to have testing? Do you need to do quarantine? And already in Europe, where borders are starting to reopen, people are already making notes of the places that are actually easier for them to travel, and they will avoid those who are difficult. So if there's a quarantine, forget it. I'm not going. If I need to do testing, that's okay. I can live with that, for example. If I need to be vaccinated, I'm already have, so okay, that's probably okay too. If they have a good control on the number of cases in their respective destination, okay, that ticks the box too. Is there regular flights in and out to the country? Okay, that ticks the box. So how people will choose where they want to go, it will be very different moving forward. So I guess the challenge to answer your question is, yes, I do believe it's a good idea, and I do believe it's will make your business more resilient over time. But the challenge now is knowing which country. If you were to restart, we don't know which country will be reopening. We have I'm joining a panel on Tuesday next week at the Arabian travel market, online, of course. And we're having a little debate, the West versus the East, and the perspective on risk management and risk assessment, as well as the opening or not reopening of borders, for example. And so in a discussion I had with the other panelists before we have the webinar next week, was about the fact that, you know, my perception is that the East initially focused mostly on we're trying to lower the risk as much as possible. Many countries in Asia want to achieve 0 cases or minimal amount of cases before they actually reopened, as opposed to in the West where they prioritize the economy as opposed to the health of their citizen. Certainly that's a perception that we have from here, where here the focus has been on health first, economy second. Now in Europe, for example, now they're achieving, they're going into a more balanced approach of health and economy at the same time, gradual and slowly reopening. In Asia, we're still in a situation where health is the only priority at the moment. Borders are closed. Can't travel in and out of Thailand, or unless for exceptional cases.
That includes Australia and New Zealand as well.
Yeah, Australia and New Zealand. Australia said they won't reopen until 2022. And New Zealand is closed. Thailand is closed. They keep saying they will reopen in July or October. I certainly don't believe that July is technically feasible under the current situation we're in. October, November, possible, but I'm still skeptical. I believe it most likely will be 2022. You've seen Singapore, Singapore, Hong Kong bubbles on and off, on and off, on and off. Now Changi Airport is completely closed. Not a single flight because of the number of cases at the airport itself.
Phuket included?
Yeah, Phuket included. It was meant to be opening on the 1st of July with people being vaccinated. We don't have the vaccine yet in Thailand, so that's not going to happen. We only have 0.001% of the population being vaccinated at the moment.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So there's no way that this plan to open on the 1st of July will happen.
Wow.
I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I certainly don't believe it's technically feasible.
Are you vaccinated? Are you vaccinated yet?
No, we don't have access. The mass vaccination hasn't started. It's only the elite who've been vaccinated so far.
Wow.
And so the senior citizens vaccination will start next month. And mass vaccination is expected to start in July, but only for Thai people. I'm a foreigner living here, so I'm way down the list.
Fly back. Just so everybody, woman, it seems it's a very international sort of conversation here. To give you a sense, where I am in the United States, as of yesterday, everyone older than 12 years old can get a vaccination. So I just took my 2 daughters, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, to get them vaccinated in a drugstore. It's very anticlimactic in a drugstore to be vaccinated. So in America, there is this sense of hope, because the population here, we are already, I think we're getting close to 50%. It's 40-something odd percent vaccinated. And people are buying plane tickets. I will be flying for the first time this coming summer. So people here are traveling domestically.
Yeah, our frustration here is the fact that actually Thailand has labs, is normally a center to produce vaccines in the country here in Thailand. We have some very, very good labs here. And why they haven't started to produce them yet, it's beyond me. I don't understand.
Wow. there's a ways to go. OK， 如果大家有什么问题，你们知道他在这个行业里面，因为从东南亚的视角看到的是跟我非常不一样的，所以各位有什么问题的话呢，放到 question conversation 里头来，或者是举手，可以让你们进来，都没问题哈。So now I'm going to ask you one or two personal questions.
Sure.
You tell us about MAP2 Ventures.
Sure.
Is that a family venture capital firm?
Yes.
Yeah. And what do you invest in?
So our priorities for MAP2 Venture is looking at investment in financial technology, fintech. That's our first priority. Second is green tech or clean technology, whichever you want to call it. So renewable energy, other applications that are actually electric vehicles or electric charging points, and other technologies that help with with improving our environment, but obviously as potentially good return also of investment moving forward. And the third one is artificial intelligence, and mostly technology focused. And a little bit also into FMCG or alcohol drinks. So,
give us an example. Give us a tangible example that I can visualize.
Okay, well, in financial technologies, for example, there's a company in the UK called Free Trade, which is doing remarkably well at the moment.
Free Trade.
The comparison in the US would be Robinhood.
Robinhood?
So they're the competitor to Robinhood in the UK market, UK and Europe as well as Australia. So we just opened an office in Australia and Sweden recently. And so that's one of the business in financial technology. The other one in green technology was Pod Point, which is the charging point stations in the city of London and across the UK for charging vehicles. So that's just one other example. We have another business that provides it's kind of a shipping containers, but actually has all the necessary power and tools for you to live off the grid. So that container will actually produce electricity to solar roofs, solar panels, stores it inside the container with the batteries, will produce water out of thin air, converts humidity into water that you can use for your toilet, your shower, and etc. And also will process the gray water and also process the black water in one container. So you can actually live completely off the grid, no connections to any government entities or any government or any government facilities or infrastructure. So you can just drop the container in the middle of an island in the Pacific and start your own life and still have the facilities.
How much does that cost? That container?
About $500,000.
Oh, okay, a little steep. 所以刚才我问了他几个他投资的这个，最后这个我觉得蛮有意思，一个集装箱的盒子，里面可以有太阳能发电，然后可以过滤它的水，还可以生产它的水，然后制造它的水，或者是过滤这些灰水啊什么的，就完全可以不用公共的这些水电设施。这个但是要50万美金，我觉得有一点点贵哈。So the question I have is, the reason you are in this venture family investment business, does it mean like tourism doesn't generate enough money? You can't make a living out of tourism? I mean, because many people in this group have this question.
Yeah, but I'll give you the same answer I gave at other panels when I speak at forums with other VCs on specifically travel and tourism. So travel and tourism investment are really, really difficult and very challenging for a couple of reasons. So just to give you some statistics, an average, we always say that a startup business rate of success is normally 1 in 30 will succeed. But in travel, it's 1 in 100. So you can see that the average is much more favorable for other type of business than it is for travel. Now, it doesn't mean that travel won't succeed. That 1 out of 100 could become a unicorn. You don't know. But typically, even the 1 in 100 will have an exit strategy or an exit return on investment on your exit of about maybe 3 to 4 times. If you go to fintech, for example, you could have 50, 100, if not 1,000 times. And other sectors, the same thing too. So it's a question of looking at, now you've got VCs who specialize in travel and tourism. They don't do anything else. They just focus on that. But they think, but when you look at their portfolio, they'll be investing in hundreds of businesses and not in smaller quantity. So they're going for volume in the hope that one of them out of the one and maybe 100 they invest will become a very successful business. When you go to other sectors, you can invest maybe in 20 and you'll have that same luck.
Very interesting. I've never heard these statistics before. So 我刚才问他说你不投这个旅游项目是不是旅游不挣钱所以他也去投这些其他的项目了。他说其实大家需要知道，在旅游行业里面创业其实是很困难的，普通创业的成功率是1/30，旅游行业的成功率是1%，所以我们是其他创业的成功率的1/3，这是一个创业的成功率概率，旅游比较低。再一个呢是退出，就是脱手退出的这个价值叫 exit value， 你比如说要退休了不做了，你要把这个企业卖掉，其他很多行业，比如说你做什么财务呀，或者银行金融啊这些创业的，你可以卖你当初投资的100倍、50倍、100倍，你可以卖得掉。但是我们旅游行业里头创业完了以后，你走的时候就24倍，是你投资的24倍。大家可以想一想哈。Okay, there's a question from one of our audience. Let's get to this one. I think this may be the only one we have time for. Sustainability is regarded as a key measurement in Chinese tourism development. Is it possible a rising trend for, I don't know what, Ingo project getting more involved in ecotourism system? Is it going to be a new attractiveness for tourists? What do you think? What is Ingo project?
I'm not sure.
那个这位建真女士，你能不能告诉我们一下这个 Ingo 是什么意思 ？Okay, but you can comment. I think in general, comment on sustainability. Sure. I actually have a whole bunch of sustainability related questions we don't have time for.
Yeah. Yes. The short answer is yes.
International NGO. Sorry.
Okay. All the research so far that have been done since last year on what we call sentiment analysis, trying to understand the desire for people to travel, their willingness to travel, their interest to travel in the future and also what they're interested in, all shows that people are now paying a lot more attention to where they want to go and what they want to do. And essentially the vast majority of people who responded to those surveys have indicated that when they travel next time, they don't want to go to crowded places. They don't want to go necessarily to a big city that's highly populated and with a lot of tourists. They want to go to nature-based destinations, eco-tourism, eco-destinations that are in wild natures, away from crowds, smaller boutique hotels and resorts, not in those 1,000-room hotels, and more family-oriented activities and destinations too. Not traveling in large groups, but in smaller groups, either with their family and their relatives. And so there's certainly people are searching for it at the moment. They're all looking for what are these destinations that can offer me that experience that will get me away from crowds into nature that are maybe more eco-friendly and responsible. So if you look at the travel in Europe, for example, at the moment, destination like Slovenia is doing fantastically well. And the reason for this, they've got the purest water in the world. You can drink the water in the lake and you'll be perfectly fine. Beautiful nature, no pollutions and etc. white space, even though it's a small country. It's not very populated, so you can enjoy some green space and not be surrounded by tons of other people, for example. And Faroe Islands and those, or people are paying a lot of attention to those destinations that they weren't necessarily did before. Now, Faroe Islands, Svalbard, and Iceland have fantastic marketing campaigns. They're probably the best in the world. You look at their videos and their pictures, I'd want to jump on the plane and go today. Yeah. So I think that contributed maybe a little bit to their success at the moment in terms of, as a brand, but also to the fact that people are looking for those type of destinations too.
I think you are spot on, because in China now, with the 230 million people traveling over May Day holiday, that trend is very clear. Small private groups out into nature, in villages, trying outdoor activities away from tourist sites and tourist crowd. And I am convinced this type of more sustainable way of travel, once people tasted it, there's no way back.
No.
There is no way back to tour buses.
No.
That's finished. So on that note, I think we will call it a day, but thank you so much, Mario. And I wish you best of luck, your journey forward, and please do stay in touch.
I will. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
I look forward to you writing a book, yeah?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
谢谢大家 Thank you. I will tell everybody else for a sec. 我们因为这是一个行业交流，所以经常我会请一些行业里面比较有思想的人来。下一个月呢，我们请了一家英国新型的奢华旅游公司，叫黑番茄 Black Tomato。他们的市场推广上做的非常非常的有意思，在国际市场上做的很好，所以大家有空的话呢，关注一下，一定来听那个讲座。I have Black Tomato CEO joining us a month from today.
Good.
Yeah. Aren't they great? Like in marketing and new concept of luxury travel, right?
Excellent.
So, yeah, thank you. Stay safe, stay well.
You too.
谢谢大家参加，好，拜拜。